Hi, it's Gab, and I'm reviewing Red Riding Hood, which is, of course, a reimagining, a reintroduction of this tale, this classic fairy tale, storybook story to the current generation, and specifically, shall we say, the Twilight generation. It's pretty obvious. I'll get into that. First, I think we know the Red Riding Hood story, and it's set up pretty much the same way here. You have a comely young lass played by Amanda Seyfried, and she's living in a village. It's not modern times. It takes place way back when, the setting in the movie. Small village on the edge of a forest, and this village has been tormented by a wolf. There's been various killings and whatnot going back in the history of the village, and so they have a very uneasy truce, unspoken, unwritten truce with the wolf, unseen wolf that's attacked them in the past. They give animal sacrifices. I guess they try to behave themselves and go about their lives. But very early on, the action is triggered by the death of Amanda Seyfried. Her character's name is Valerie. Her sister is found dead, presumably by this wolf, and this triggers upheaval in the village because the peace has been broken. A certain sort of werewolf hunter slash religious figure is brought in. This, of course, is the Gary Oldman character, if you know anything about the movie. So yay, Gary Oldman shows up for a bit of color, shall we say. And so he's this very, this colorful, slightly, shady character there to help them, also has his own motives. Seems like a bad guy. Well, Gary Oldman, so you're expecting some not nice shenanigans from him. And so this is pretty much the premise. Of course, there is a parallel or entwined love story. Valerie is in love with her childhood friend Peter, but she is betrothed to another whom she does not love but would be good for her family, although there's various family history that is a little bit shady. So that gives you there's really no other point of that other than the opportunity for young, attractive couple to be pining and giving each other goo-goo eyes and a little bit of heavy breathing behind the shack and all that sort of thing. The male lead is Shiloh Fernandez, I believe is his name. Not known to me. Certainly he's being touted as the latest discovery, sort of like, what's his name, Sparkles from Twilight. Now the Twilight comparisons primarily are probably because the director of this film is Catherine Hardwicke. She was actually in attendance at the premiere I was at, and she was the director of the first Twilight film. So that's where the Twilight comparisons probably first have their basis. But then from there, that would be lazy film critique to just compare the two because they're about young people and it's sort of a fantasy story and the director is the same. But the comparison is fair because there's a lot of similarities in many other ways. The look, the tone, the acting. It's definitely, the studio heads had obviously got into a room and said, how can we reproduce the Twilight phenomenon in another story, and this is what they came up with. That is to say, they didn't do anything special with this story. It could have been a lot edgier. I think the choice of director was maybe a mistake. This is this is for the mall generation, no offense. The crowd I was there with was not young crowd, not old, but not young, and it just wasn't the right audience. There was snickering and guffaws, unintentional. I don't think it was taken the way it was meant to be. This is for the younger adults, primarily female, so they can get in with the swooning, they can get into the fantasy story, but the fantasy story could have been a lot edgier. I was really disappointed in that. It could have done a lot of interesting dark things. It's really quite a basic story, unoriginal. We figured out who the werewolf is within the first quarter of the movie, I would say, and it wasn't an interesting twist. We thought of a half a dozen more interesting twists. There's a problem when you're rewriting the script on your way home. And some lovely shots, of course. Again, just like in Twilight, there's some very beautiful visual fantasy imagery, the red against the snow, but you've seen that in the previews, and there isn't that much more to be had other than that sort of thing. The wolf. The wolf is a very cool huge, well-rendered wolf when you see it. When the wolf shows up, you're like, yay, the wolf's here. And those scenes are quite well done. But again, we've seen this before, even in the latest Twilight films and many other films that have wolves. Now, I was thinking of The Wolfman, which was from about a year ago, the one with Anthony Hopkins and Benicio del Toro, and it just won an Oscar for Best Makeup. And that had fabulous wolf scenes in it, and it had transformation scenes in it. Red Riding Hood does not have one werewolf transformation scene. Now, please tell me how you can have a werewolf movie without a transformation scene. You can't. Well, you can, but you shouldn't. It was really disappointing in that respect, and many others. Like I said, the younger kids, I'm sure the younger kids, God, will like it. I mean, there's some nice elements of fantasy and whatnot. It's nice to see Amanda Seyfried. She's lovely to look at. I don't think any of the acting is anything fantastic. Will Shiloh Fernandez be the next great thing? I found him more charismatic than Robert Pattinson, but that's not saying too much. He reminded me a bit of a young Joaquin Phoenix, so I'd be interested to see him in something else. Please, Catherine Hardwicke, I didn't tell you this last night, but I'm telling you now if you watch Gab and Dad, try for something else next time. You've done this genre enough service, and I think this genre needs some edgier directors if they're going to keep cranking out all these fantasy and storybook fairy tale stories, which they are. So hopefully the next one will be a little bit more interesting than this one, Red Riding Hood. Thanks for watching.